The background is that I think this is a model that you probably have seen something similar. Master has been going back and forth on these kind of models. I think they probably look a bit different each time, but it's not something new. But the reason why I am just inviting you now is because I really feel like something hit home a bit a few days ago. And obviously, that actually just means that there's more work to do. But um, yeah, I think one part of it is just trying to explain it from my perspective, and then this can be applied for anyone. And hopefully together we can also then reach more understandings on this. I think there are many depths to it. So with those words, if there are no like comments or questions, I can go into first explaining how I see the model, and then I'm going to apply it just to me briefly, and then some kind of key insights or comments that Master has shared like the last days, or just things that I think relate to this. And after this, we can, open up more discussion. If anyone wants to try the model on themselves, that could work as well. Okay, I see Ajna. I have one face. No, I have more faces now, I see. Uh, okay. And like I said, just stop me if anything is unclear or if you want to say something. I guess everyone can see the picture here. However, I'm gonna try to make it full screen if that's possible. Can I do that? Full screen. Yeah, that's better. So the thing that Master is saying, that we all have a core wound. This could be called something else. I've even heard that it's been, but it can be called the unmanifest impression, many different things. But it's always something small or nothing. It's this feeling of being great or wanting to be big or all those things is never the core. That is the reaction to the core. So we can say that it's like the sense of being unloved. Masters confirm that there's nothing deeper than the feeling of not being loved or not being that, for instance. But anyone would feel it like, since we all have different unconscious missions, maybe someone will be like, I'm a loser, I'm abandoned, I'm nothing. But it's always something like not good. Sinner, I think, also is like a collective a wound we have probably for thousands of years due to the religion like Christianity and so on. And because we don't want to go into this core wound, or like the biology, as we probably know, like it's not just mental and psychology, it's also biology. The brain is interpreting this as very, very bad news to go into it. And therefore we then want to escape into a want. We want something. So for instance, if the core would be interpreted in words as I'm a loser, maybe then I want to be a winner. I'm abandoned, or then maybe I want to be included or popular. If I'm nothing, I just want to be something. So this I think we recognize as like the two poles of the mind. And what I didn't write here is also that there are just three possible states for this person. Either one is pursuing this want, moving away from the wound, or one is pretending that I'm already there, which is the ego. The ego is the one who's kind of trying to manage this and pretend. Or one is falling back to the wound, feeling like, okay, I'm never gonna be a winner, I'm never gonna be included, I'm never gonna be something. So it's kind of a broken state there. Does it feel clear so far?
Mm.
Okay, cool. And then what Master also said, then some people we will notice they have what he this time called the superego. So the ego is a cover up, like it's a pretension, management hides. If we have an ego, it's not impossible to admit that, oh my God, what am I doing? Or Jesus, yes, it's very embarrassing, but I'm actually pretending this. But some people would have a super ego, which means that there is no way to come through. I don't know, maybe some would call them like a narcissist, like a pathological narcissist. I guess there could be many terms, but Master distinguishes these two from, we will all have an ego normally, I guess, because another way of looking at it is whenever there is another, whenever we believe there is another, then we are already pretending because it's not true. And the other is also then like something that happens in duality. And I don't want to acknowledge what is here, then I create this duality that I want to get away from what is here. I have a want. And then when we are in duality, then all of a sudden I am not me, and therefore there is the other, and then the ego and everything happens that we are looking at. So I don't think any of this is that new. And let's see, these are exactly. Desires are reactions to the hidden wound. And then I think you would also recognize that we see this core wound is what is. And why is there such a problem to accept what is for us, which is what Master over and over is saying. We cannot, because we always want to get away from what is, because there is something very uncomfortable, or at least we interpret it as very uncomfortable. And then, so what you recognize, I guess, this movement from what is to what can be can only happen in acceptance of what is. So transformation and transcendence is another movement altogether towards what can be when this is accepted. So as soon as the second we just move a little bit to the right here, there's no way. We're already moving towards a goal. We're already having future, which is what we want. And the past is then also created immediately, which will be colored by this wound, this core wound. So that is like the basic theory. And if you're cool with that, I can like use me as an example and a little bit why it hit home for me, if I can, and then some of Master's key comments on this. So for me, I think abandoned is a very strong, uh, clear wound. I think Master's been hammering me a lot over the years, mostly for the ego. So, like, as long as I'm in the ego, I'm pretending that no, I'm good, I'm doing fine. There's no way to come close to the core wound. And so, only I think when I've been vulnerable, he may address that, maybe your parents abandoned you, maybe there was no one who saw you. But if I'm not vulnerable, if I am in the ego, or if I'm like really pursuing this, I think then I'm like further away from being authentic. So he kind of has to hit the ego first. So I stop pretending for a moment, and then it's a possibility of finding the core wound. And when he talked about this, and I mean, I've seen this for a long time. Yeah, I want to be with, I've seen the movement. And I've heard him saying that I'm trying to get away from this core wound. But when for some reason when he said that this time, I some part of me just understood that I actually want to seek this wound. Um, that and then like okay, then like that made so much sense that conscious suffering that Gurdjieff talks about, conscious suffering is to stop this movement, discover the suffering that is already here, because we're all walking around with the suffering, because we all have the core wound. And maybe I'm jumping a bit here and there now, but it's interesting that this is not like, yes, it's basic, because only when this one is addressed, the core wound, can we birth ourselves. Only then can we at all relate to the guru. Only then can we go from two to one. But it's like it's basic, but it's also very deep. If you remember this story that Master talked about, I think his name was Vashistrate. He was like meditating. He was like 158 too. he was so close to enlightenment and he had all these powers. And then he challenged Shiva, and Shiva sent down Mangabambige or something like that, some woman who made him, or he fell in love with her, and then he fell from this. Then what happened was that even though he was so close to enlightenment, when she came, she triggered his core wound of maybe, I'm nothing or I'm a loser. And he looked at her and felt like, oh, with her, I can be something. I can be a winner. So only when, like, this is the last thing that happens before enlightenment, is that this one is actually totally dissolved. So I asked Master because he always said like the last sadhana he had was that he conquered sleep. So I said, what was that then? And then he said, yeah, he had to conquer sleep in order to totally resolve the core wound. Because the moment he fell asleep, even though like I guess a month from enlightenment, the moment he fell asleep, he fell back to this one again. So maybe on that level, I mean, maybe it's experienced as something different. Maybe it's only experienced as I am not enlightened. I don't know, but it's still the same mechanism in a way. So it's like it's very basic and it's also very deep and like almost impossible to transform it into like so that it disappears. Um,
Mm.
okay, I can continue a little bit more. So, okay, what he also said, like, what did they make us worship? What was the climate that created this wound? And that's also very important to look at. Um, because he said, like in Sweden, for instance, I see we're quite a few Swedes here. He says the Sweden is like a terrible country, but he says like no, everyone we learn to abandon each other, and we celebrate and we worship abandonment in the name of being free or being left alone or like individual or something like that. So
Mm.
they made us worship that everyone is for themselves, but that creates this wound that, for instance, I'm abandoned. And then he says this has to shift. But then, as you probably recognize, but we're all spoiled. There is a benefit to all of this. There is a benefit to keeping this core wound, and we found a way to exploit it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so tricky. So, for instance, if I'm a loser, then I don't have to take responsibility. If I'm abandoned, then I don't have to care about anyone. I guess same for nothing. If I'm a sinner, then I can be a victim and I don't have to stand up for it. So that is once again then a very important thing to can we give up the benefit? And then he says like no one, therefore no one is a victim. Everyone is actually succeeding in what we're doing. So there's no way not to succeed. For me, who is abandoned, said, Eric, you're actually succeeding. Yes, you're abandoned and you're suffering by it, but then you can only think about yourself. So you are already succeeding. We are all succeeding with the strategy that we are using. So that's also an interesting way of looking at it. We're succeeding in the strategy that we chose, but maybe we want to like relook at that strategy. Uh, And he said he took this example that even the homeless man with no responsibility succeeding, that is probably exactly what he wanted to not to face his wound, which would then lead to transformation and transcendence to something more, something new. And then like I asked a few questions about like, okay, but what would be the sadhana? Like open to the more. And then he said, like, no, in this case, we're talking to our primal brains. And he said, like, then you need like a much more simple language to deal with the wound because it's a primal thing. So to involve like siddhas and yogams and the more may not be the right way. So for me, for instance, if to deal with I'm abandoned, uh, and therefore I abandoned me. He said, maybe you can worship, because he said, like, you have to reset to the right worship. And then he said, for instance, worship togetherness without losing me, or like worship togetherness without giving oneself up, would be a way. And then he also often says, like, remember, how did you come to me? How did we come to Master? And I've been thinking about that also, and many things like these few days has been kind of landed in a new way, thanks to this. And then, because I was be thinking like, I was kind of okay when I came to Master, but now I see, no, actually, I was abandoned. I was like just living my wound, and I was running into escaping the wants, and I had an ego that I was doing really well. So I was completely lost in all this without any chance to get out of it when I came to him. And I think he also says, remember how you came, and don't change the equation because this equation is still true. I mean, the core wound here, even if from childhood, is still here. So it as is relevant to be aware of it now, like more than 10 years later, as it was then. So now I only have three more like sentences here that I've written down from what Master said. And I think this is quite cool because what he's saying also, I mean, he asked like, okay, Eric, because I've been sitting much more with this now. Like my awareness is not so much when I'm sitting with Master directed towards what I want. It's more directed back to to look at the wound, which makes me feel more like vulnerable and sensitive. And then he said, okay, now are you when we investigate this wound that we're going closer and closer to, no matter how uncomfortable it is it you or is it not you? That's like something to discover, because I guess the brain will say, oh no, this is a very, very terrible part of me. This is the worst part of me. But then for oneself to investigate, is this actually me, or am I maybe observing it, which means I can be ABC with it, for instance. Because and then he said, like, you are wounded by the idea you shouldn't be wounded. He's saying that actually to look at this wound is not so bad if we don't
Yes.
have the idea that it shouldn't be there, if that makes sense. So he said, like, if you don't have a problem with that your mother didn't breastfeed you, or maybe your father, like, he beat us or something like that, if we don't walk around with an idea that it shouldn't have been so, this wound is not difficult to deal with. But the interpretation of it is like, or the justifications and of victim mentality, those are the ones that makes it more tricky. And then he's also said, like, he goes back and forth, and then he said, no, this is actually not you. So what are you doing? You're trying to escape what you are not. So this whole movement is escaping something we believe that we are, but we don't want to look at it, but it's actually something we're not. So since we're trying to run away from something we're not, there's no way to find ourselves. Um, all right, that's actually all of the presentation. I can take one more concrete example of like a small shift that I saw today, which is that Master said, like, to us, we were sitting there, and I think he was kind of addressing that, the quorum wasn't as good as it could be in the group. And then he said, and he looked at me and he like, you're sitting with an enlightened man, and and he said, I would have died, he said about himself. I would have like given my right arm to sit with an enlightened master. And then I could see that normally my core wound would have been triggered as Jesus, like I would have been guilt. I would have been like, he often says, I'm not condemning you. I'm just, maybe mirroring something. And I think condemned is normally the reaction I would have got into. But maybe because I've been just like voluntarily investigating this more the last days, I could see how my brain was on the way there. But then it was like, no, what is he actually saying? Maybe he's saying that there's a possibility to appreciate more. And I mean, I don't want to claim that everything is linked, but for me, this is a bit linked because I could see, oh, yeah, why do I take a negative approach of feeling attacked and condemned by him when he's saying that. He might as well just say, "Hey, Eric, you're missing to appreciate this more, or you're missing to love this situation more." And I think that this like true positive attitude is not possible unless we are dealing with the core wound, because if we're not dealing with it, all we want to do is to get away from it. And I think like to start like being curious about this that we've been trying to escape our whole life. I don't see a more important sadhana for myself, even though it's not the only thing to do, but I see it as very critical. All right. Thank you very much for listening this far.
Mm.
Anyone, like, as long as there is a question, I probably keep recording. And if someone wants to start talking about themselves, and if you want to stop the recording, you can also tell me, so I stop the recording.
I have a question. So if I heard you correctly, so we're trying to run away from something that we actually are not. So actually there's nothing to do or fix or something. So is it then just that it's an idea in our mind?
No, it's also biology. It is actually, it is a physical, it is like the brain and like, terror, for instance. Terror is a part of this, which we all
Yes.
have installed in us. So it's not that easy. We have to, go towards it and I guess feel it. You find your own way,
Mm.
the energy of it, the emotional part of it. Maybe we have to think about it too. I don't know.
Mm.
But essentially we are not this. And as long as we can, be aware of A, B, C, if you are observing it, then we cannot be it, as like if you make it the B and you're observing it, then can you find this a distinction between or a space in between? I mean, that's a very good way to deal with it, I think. But we have to look at it, and maybe, sooner for some, later for others, we come to a point to see we are not it. But this last retreat was so much about birthing oneself, like can we birth ourselves? And the birthing of ourselves goes through this, like let's say that we're moving to the right here. Okay, little Eric is my feeling, a little abandoned, useless loser Eric is how I actually feel about me, and then I want to be someone else. That is like the whole classical movement. And then can the observer, okay, no, I'm gonna, look at little Eric here, and I'm gonna try to be open to that there is more. Then
Mm.
the true I am can be birthed. And then
Okay.
and then this wound will still be there,
Mm.
but it's not that scary because one is clearly more than this wound. But as long as one is in this movement, when turning back, I guess there's a big risk or chance that it's gonna look like the wound is everything that exists. And there may be anger, there may be sorrow, there may be terror. But I think that's why it's so tricky to make this turn, because when we do it, it feels like the worst is coming up, at least for me, and I think for many people that I hear.
Okay.
And I think it's maybe helpful to know that every one of us are walking around with this thing,
Yeah.
so to say.
Mm. Thank you.
And thank you too. And I can also like admit I haven't been so much in touch with it now while talking, because I've been so focused on trying to say the right thing. And now when I remember that and when I like go more into it, I can feel like I'm feeling more soft. I'm feeling like more sensitive, and I also feel almost like a better person towards you guys, because I'm less in my head, and I'm like more feeling a bit more alive. So I mean, just 4 or 5 days for me to consciously go in that direction, it's a lot less scary. But I also don't know the depth of this, of course. So I have to also be humble in that, I guess. Sorry, I think maybe someone was about to say something.
Yeah, I was thinking about the superego because sometimes when masters say something, it's embarrassing because it's the ego and I'm aware of it. But at other times, I have no clue, and I realize it afterwards. I don't know if it's like we have parts of us that are in the ego, and then there are other parts that are in the superego.
Yeah, I guess
I
that could be.
can't see that I'm aware of all my egos.
Yeah, and I think, yeah,
And
that is.
like you said in the beginning, and you said in the beginning, sorry, you said in the beginning, Eric, that when you first came to Master, you thought you were pretty okay. You had no where, right? So somewhere we are in the superego. Although a psychopath or those who has no clue, they're like to a larger extent there, or if not only there. That was just a thought.
Yeah, no, I think also that maybe on the same line of thinking that there are probably like if we would write down the 10 worst things about ourselves, there are probably some of them we're more aware of and there's less reaction, and maybe there's some of them there's more reaction, and then maybe we're missing 3 or 4 of the points. But from my understanding, it all boils down to one single like knot
Or, yeah.
that everything then like starts from. And I
Mm.
think if we really like understand that the only way to be free is to address this knot, we cannot avoid it, then we will never start the work for real. That is my understanding.
Mm. Maybe think of also that Master points out our good sides, and sometimes there are things that we're not aware of at all that we had. It's the opposite, the other side of it.
Yeah.
It's like we actually thought it was the other way around. And it points out, no,
Yeah,
it's the
that I
opposite.
think has a lot to do with the story we tell because we've learned how to, like we said, we learned how to exploit this. And that is what we don't want to give up.
Mm. Sorry, one more question. Can this then also be if we start to look at, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know, they call it like the shadow work. Could that be like a part of it?
Sure, totally sounds like it. I mean, I am definitely not the expert. Maybe Emma Weiwei
Mm,
would be, but I
mm,
believe so.
mm,
I think you can make probably many different names and models, but
mm.
I guess the underlying structure is going to be the same.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, Eric, sorry, you talked about the uh, either structure, no, the strategies,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have any circle or any cloud, but it's mm, because the core wound is there, and then we escape through whatever
Yeah, the
direction.
ego is like this has cover up structures and pretension and manages and it does a lot of things.
Yeah,
I can give
but
examples if you want.
no, so but I want to be a winner. Is that a structure?
And no, that's a want, like a classic want or
Okay, yeah, okay,
desire.
yeah. Okay, so structure is there. So yeah.
It's a
So
movement
please,
away from the core wound.
please explain how an example. The
Yeah,
core wound.
okay. Okay, if I use then um that somewhere deep down I feel I'm a loser and this loser is not going to get laid. So I when I go to the nightclub I'm pretending that oh my God, I got my shit together. I know what to say to get the girl interested, and there's a lot of strategies, and the whole thing is just a big role play and a pretension with some kind of a goal to not be a loser but to be a winner. And this whole scene and she is just reduced to means to an end. And of course, there's a dopamine high from these ones to the right here. So that is also a part of how this circuit, keeps going. But in the end, if I really look at it, the whole charade is just because I don't want to feel, in my words, I don't want to feel how it feels to be a loser. Because if I can sit down and feel that for a while, then all of these things is not needed anymore to the right. So then like a real meeting is possible because then I don't need to use anything as a means to the end of escaping the core wound, which I cannot escape anyway because I'm walking around with it in my body.
I'm just laughing about the paradox because then you will get laid. You see that?
Well, if I don't, maybe no, I think I'm gonna get a
No,
hug.
no, but you see the point that, yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
Someone,
But yeah. It's a little bit like, I guess, going, I think there's a lot of sex and pleasures and those things here to the right. And I think, heart and love is more in embracing this and moving higher.
Eric, can I ask about the exploitation piece? Like, can you add that piece in how one might be exploiting this, just in this example,
Um,
if you don't mind?
yeah, for sure. I mean, if I take the example I just used, I'm thinking a bit loud now, so please excuse me if it's not completely structured. But I mean, I made this pretension that I am a winner. And which means that I'm actually walking around and I've sold that image to a lot of people around me. So that means that I am like, I am exploiting the whole system of pretending and everything. And for me, then to stop, and Master often said, it's a lot. I mean, why would you grow up to be a real great man if you can just pretend it? Why would you be a good person, a good human being, if you can just pretend it? So, I mean, the deeper we have gone into believing our pretension, the more we're exploiting this whole, like, this is the collective, like, and everyone is using as a reflection. Then it's like, oh my God, I have to deal with this. I have to come clean, and I have to give up all my dopamine highs that I've been getting out of this. And in that low and in that completely feeling like a loser, I'm supposed to go back and feel this wound from, childhood. I guess, as you can see, the further we have gone into exploiting it, the more difficult that we get. But I guess that the deeper we exploit it, we will face also deeper and deeper lows. But that's okay because we're still gonna start hoping for a new high until I guess we're totally broken. But we can also have other exploitations. Master often uses like he says maybe it's not the core wound, but maybe it's a wound that we're poor, we don't have any money. And then he said like, how are you exploiting it? Yeah, I mean then if I'm a beggar, everyone else has to take care of me, for instance. So it's really nice to exploit the wound. Or I'm like I'm unemployed, so I don't have to do anything for someone else. Or just escaping responsibility, all these things. And you can also put in like you play around with it for yourself. I guess, I mean, the words are good in to get an orientation, but my experience is that like for me, like understanding that there's no way away from it, and liberation actually goes through going into this pain, I guess, in a bit of a, I guess, faithful attitude. And then I think like if I think too much about it, I'm not doing the work because I don't think the core wound can be thoughts. I think it has to be something more, I guess, physical, but I'm not sure. But I don't think thoughts will do it, even though I guess it helps to dare to go closer to it. But this could also be very individual. I'm not sure actually, just for me.
I suspect you're right if you said Matt's talking about this in terms of like the primal brain. Like thoughts aren't going to
Mm.
do much to when you're feeling afraid, telling yourself that, thinking about it isn't going to do much.
That is
So
very
makes
true.
Makes sense what you said there, that it might require more than thinking, but maybe this is a really nice orientation. Thank you so much for putting this out there.
Yeah, and actually, good that you reminded about that, the primal, because I now then for 24 hours have been practicing this at Master, saying whenever I go into a group of people, okay, I'm worshiping togetherness without losing me. And I'm remembering that this is not complex and I'm talking to a primal part of me. Some would call it the inner child, for instance. And it really works. Like, I mean, obviously I fall over and over, but like many times now in a social setting, I'm finding myself more comfortable than I've ever been. Maybe because I admit that, okay, there's a fear of being abandoned by these people very deeply inside me. So I just want to get away from there. But no, I'm not worshiping to get away. I'm worshiping togetherness without losing me. Very nice.
So is that what you're telling yourself, Eric? And that works.
Yeah, as a
Worshipping.
sadhana. As a sadhana. Yeah. So I guess when one starts to feel like this is the worst part of me, or this is the part I really don't want to go closer to see its primal and find a way to address that as if it is a 3-year-old, you know, like that kind of language. I guess one will find one's own mythology.
Mm.
Anyone else? Divya is raising her hand.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, it should be fine now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I was thinking the reverse, like being, I don't want to be part of any gathering, is also another level of ego. Like a beggar sitting on a street saying, "I don't want any money. Uh, I don't want to deal with this world." So that's other extreme of what you were just saying. That when you go to a group. You're telling yourself, I can be more present while I am practicing or I am in togetherness.
I kind of understand, but I still don't feel like I am gripping what you're saying. So you're saying that, like, I mean, if the core is, if the wound is I'm abandoned, then I mean, I guess the healing of it is to do the opposite, to go against that. And then you say the beggar on the street, he does not want to go to a group. So you were saying that he is still escaping into a want. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, or ego, rather a ego, I think. Maybe somewhere it's an ego thinking I can do without being like the ancient way of giving up the world and going in forest. Maybe that's also master sometimes says it is not the right way because you have to, that's another kind of ego we practice.
I guess normally, my take is that normally it's probably just like you say, but I think you can also look at it from another way, that like when it actually worked, it could be like maybe someone was really scared of being abandoned, and then they dealt with it by completely abandoning themselves and surviving it. Which
Yeah.
is how, you know, how the beggar, like Master says, you have to answer your survival. So how did Buddha do it? Or like, how did the beggar do it? Well, he said, okay, I'm answering sex by I'm not going to have sex anymore in my life if I'm a monk. And I'm answering survival by begging. And inclusion, I am answering by completely abandoning myself. So it could be a conscious step to really confront the core wound. But if it becomes an identity, which I think what you're referring to, then I guess one is escaping into a want. Maybe, you know, I want to be a beggar and feel good about myself because of it.
No, my question is that sometimes, okay, we have, I feel scared to be a part of group. I go to a group and be part of it while I am still present myself. So one part is this, but the other part is that I just leave everything and be by myself. So and that creates a confusion. Sorry if I'm confusing here also, but to define a core wound is sometimes confusing. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably more like Emma Weiwei's department, but we can still help out to think together about it.
Yeah.
But I think just going in the line of what do I feel uncomfortable, and whenever it's uncomfortable, to try to dig into what is the most uncomfortable, like just going
Okay.
along that line. Maybe we don't have to be too ambitious to find the core wound immediately, but just finding, something that, like, I really don't want to feel this, or I really don't want to look at this. That's a good sign. That means we're probably looking in the right
Mm.
direction. So, like,
Okay.
if you're feeling uncomfortable with people, that could be many reasons. Um, but it's also a very good place for you then to try to discover what is the wound here that I don't want to feel, that kind of flares up when you are with this group.
Hmm. Okay.
So I guess it's like it is conscious suffering to be more, if we can be more curious instead of like going to the right all the time, can we somehow be a bit more curious and direct our awareness more to the left while
Ah, okay.
while
Okay,
remembering
I
ABC.
see what you're saying now.
Yeah. And
I got it.
it's the last thing we naturally want to do. And I don't know how our surrounding will react to it. Um, I don't know, but I mean, here I can see, like, here with the people like with Lynn and Nora, and like uh, it feels nicer to be with them for me when I am when I'm directing my attention. You see my little cursor here, right? What I'm moving around with. Yeah, okay.
Yes, yes.
Otherwise, I feel really stupid. But I feel more. I believe they also feel more comfortable because I become more calm when I'm looking to the left.
Hmm.
Because I'm not, I'm like, my body rests a bit because I'm not trying to lie and get away from something as much.
I understand. In the same context, what I think is it's like you get more comfortable and the work stops there. Not telling about you. In a sense, I feel like that. I feel a comfort zone and then I'm lost to the comfort rather than going back to my core wound. That's what I think I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, exactly. I think comfort zone is a good word to introduce here. The comfort zone would definitely not be around here. It would
Yeah.
probably be around the ego, and maybe, when we feel like we're on our way to succeed up to the right here.
So
Because
when the surroundings feels, if I may put it what I understood, if the surrounding feels odd, it's not I am inspecting or I am looking at the surroundings. I'm going back to me. What is there? What is getting triggered? So I'm going back to the core wound.
maybe, I mean, still, I have to really be honest that like I don't have much experience of this, and I don't have a lot of case studies. I think it could be. I mean, some surroundings are probably also places we shouldn't be. So we also cannot rule out that maybe your instinct sometimes is right. This is not a group where you want to be. But one
Yeah.
can. But still, I think one could still be curious about what's going on inside me. But I think I don't know.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks
Okay.
for exploring it with me.
Yeah, no, sure.
It's very interesting to see this in a drawn up like this. because the master speaks and he talks and then you hear it, but then when you actually break it down to a picture like this, it becomes more, you can grasp it better.
Yeah.
And save it and walk through it. It becomes so clear now.
Okay, guys. Anything more? I think we can end with a song too, if
Hey,
anyone
can
wants
I?
to have some music. Yeah, someone saying something.
Hi. Sorry, I'm walking my dog, so I haven't been I've been on camera off and I'm just listening, but this reminds me if I could just is it okay to share something?
Sure.
Okay. Um this really reminds me how Master has put this down, and I love this slide because it so clearly highlights something that I read recently that's really stuck with me, and that is the wound is the medicine. And it's such a everything in me as my ego wants to avoid that, like avoid the wound, go immediately to the right, and all it is a cycle back to the wound because that's where the medicine is. And for me, what I'm noticing is like, is this specific to you, Eric, when you write the core wound is the feeling of not enough, or is that this a generic description of the wound? I'm asking you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna
Yeah,
the feeling of not enough, I think that's quite generic,
yeah,
it we could also have written something else here.
yeah,
But
right,
I think
exactly.
to be unloved would almost have been a better generic one, I think.
Yeah. Or I really resonate. And to me, the core wound is it's shame. It's so wrapped around, it becomes codified almost as shame. And what I notice is definitely the wound of not of feeling like not enough, which goes, way back, but also this feeling that I don't have control of myself or I'm out of control. That for me is a real core wound, which I identify as my shame. And as soon as I try to take the medicine that wound offers, there's so much fear that arises because I will be exposed to um, my all my pretending gets exposed, and everyone who is in other than the group, other than the sangha, anyone who's studying this work understands. But if I've been pretending to be something more than my wound, um, then I'm exposed when I stay there. And I am just have so much fear around just being on the left side of this slide, but it's the only answer. And I think I'm coming to a point where I'm really experiencing that. Like there's nothing else on the right side for me. And I've tried and I've tried and I've tried to keep it going, the cycle going unconsciously. And this is just such a beautiful depiction of what I have come to experience for myself. It's really timely. So thank you for sharing. And I just wanted to offer that's something I've been sitting with, that the wound is the medicine and we got to take our medicine. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you too. Yeah, it reminds me of also something Master said that, like, let's say that we feel like we're a loser and then we want to be a winner. And then he said, let's say, which is unusual, that we actually succeed, we become a real winner in the world. And
Yeah,
then you're really, really bad off because you have succeeded in not being you. You're
yes,
not you. So
that's it.
the most authentic thing we have before we birth the real I am is this wound.
Yeah. Yes. This is so, so important. Thank you.
All right. Anyone more, or are we listening to one song before? Going once, going twice, all these things. Okay, so if anyone, we have a couple of chat messages. Thank you from Margina. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I'll play a song if no one else has anything more to say for now. And then I'm gonna share this to the people, the recording to the ones who have asked.